I said, how we doing? Come on, let's get some energy in the room. Yes, I could hear my wife laughing in the back. Oh, she's right here. That's why I heard her, because she's so close. Well, I'm super pumped to be with you guys this morning. I feel like that God is going to do something great in this place, and I'm super excited. So I'm going to open up with a question. I'm going to ask you a question. Maybe someone's asked you before, maybe not. But have you ever heard from God? Seems like a simple enough question. Have you ever heard from God so clearly that that thing you heard him say was 100% what you were supposed to do? Well, I'm going to tell you about a time where this happened to me. And when this happened, I was about 30 years old at the time. I know, I'm older than 30. Can you believe it? I was 30 years old at the time. This happened many years ago. And we were living in Williamstown, and I can very vividly remember when this happened to me. I do my best thinking and praying in the shower, so that's where this happened. I can picture the ugly green tiles in the shower right now, to the point where they're so retro that they were back in style. You know what I mean? Anybody else got green tiles? We did. But I remember this vision that I got from God. And I'm not a big vision guy. This is literally the only time that's ever happened to me. Well, I was in the shower, and I saw this picture in my head, and it was me, and I was standing on a stage just like this. And there was a room full of people out in front of me, just like this. And I couldn't exactly tell what I was saying, but I could tell that God was telling me something about this experience. He was saying to me, one day, you're going to be a pastor. You're going to preach in front of people. You're going to deliver the word. And you're going to be a pastor. And I was like, I think you sent the letter to the wrong P.O. box, because at this point in my life, I was like probably about a year into full-time ministry. I was completely content with being the worship guy, just kind of hanging out behind a guitar and my microphone and singing the words that come on that screen back there. I was completely content. So I figured maybe that was a mistake, but no, I definitely heard from God in that moment. Well, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I haven't really shared this story with very many people at all. To be honest, it's because it was terrifying when I heard it. I didn't share with anybody with the exception of my wife for like 4 years. 4 years goes by. And so at this point in time, I'm full ministry mode, right? I've been in ministry for about 4 years, 3.5, 4 years, something like that. And so I'm 34 at the time, and I've kept it under my hat this entire time. I haven't told anybody. So, see, what happens is I'm in ministry mode, and I'm running hard and running fast. And I just come to this season in my life where I was going through this extreme burnout. I was running, and I felt like I hit a brick wall, and I just could not go any further in what I was doing. It was that with a combination of a few other things that led us to our next life choice, which was sort of a drastic one. It was some things that happened at the church I was working at that just left a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth. We also just had a miscarriage, which was just devastating. And also just overall general stress of life. Just all compiled and hit me at the same moment. So me and my wife and my family, we came to this conclusion to where we were going to run. We were going to quite literally run. We sold everything that we owned, and we bought a school bus that was partially converted into a camper. We finished the conversion, and we hit the road. That's crazy, right? When you're stressed, you do crazy things, I think, sometimes. We hit the road. We traveled the country for about a year. It was a wonderful time with my family. We were getting away from the world's problems, and we really got to reset as far as our family goes. But I wasn't only running from problems at home. I was running from spiritual problems. See, during this time, I never turned my back on God fully, but I did find myself blaming God for a lot of the pain that I was going through. A lot of the stuff that hit me all at once, I found myself pointing my finger at God and saying, how could you let this happen? How could you allow me to go through this pain and this suffering? I've devoted my life to ministry, and this is what happens. I was in a really, really tough spot spiritually. Well, it comes to a full circle moment because by the time we come back, and I had done some soul searching, and we landed back here at Pathway, and we went through some counseling, and I really came to this conclusion. I came to the conclusion that God is faithful even when we are flawed. You see, my thinking that it was all God's fault was a flawed way to think. And all the times that I blamed him and all the times that I just ran away was a flawed way to think and to act. Because I wasn't realizing this point, that God is faithful even when we are flawed. Well, guys, we are in the second week. Oh, by the way, I almost skipped something. God's faithfulness came to fruition, and look what I'm doing right now. Can I get a witness in the house? This was a faith journey that took 8 years to happen, from point of calling to fulfillment. 8 years. My God is faithful, even when I'm messed up. And I'm still messed up, by the way, but that's another time. We are in week 2 of the story. And Pastor Ryan kicked us off last week with In the Beginning. And we're going to be staying in that same vein in the very early scriptures of the Bible. We'll be in Genesis. And we're going to be talking about some people who were extremely flawed, but God was still faithful. We're going to be talking about Abraham and Isaac and Jacob and all the OGs of the Old Testament. And we're going to go through story by story, and I'm going to point out to where they were flawed, and then I'm going to point out to where God was faithful. You want to go on a journey with me? Yeah, let's go. All right. Genesis verse 12, verses 1 through 6. This is Abram's call. This is when God initially calls Abram. You see, the Lord had said to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and whoever curses you, I will curse. And all the people on earth will be blessed through you." What a calling to have on your life. Abraham gets this calling from God. And let's just really quick recap what God says to him. He says, God promised him and his wife to have many, many descendants. At this point in time, they have no children. And Abram's 75 years old, so a little bit of a late bloomer. 75, but he's ready to go, I guess. So the other one is he's going to be the father of many nations. The next one is he's going to inherit this foreign land that's already occupied, but it's going to belong to him and his many descendants. And lastly, he says, all the people of the earth will be blessed through you. What a calling God has placed on this man's life. Well, they go ahead and they take the initial step of faith. They take the first step. They pack all their possessions, Abram and his wife Sarai, and they take their nephew Lot, and they take all their things, and they head out to this land where the Lord is going to lead them. They head out to the land of Canaan, which was already occupied by the Canaanites. So they go, they follow the calling of the Lord, and they find this little corner that they're not going to bug anybody in Canaan, and they pitch their tents. And they begin this faith journey that God has called them on. Well, about 10 years passes. 10 years, and they're still waiting for God to move. Because at this point, Abram's 75 years old, and still no kids. He's going to father many nations, but did I say 75? He's 85 years old, but he still has no kids, him and his wife. So they're they're at this point probably pretty discouraged because 10 years prior, God is like, I'm going to bless you and you're going to have many nations come from you. Kings will come from you. If you could count the dust of the earth, then you can count your descendants. But no descendants yet. I can imagine the frustration that they're probably going through. And it comes to a point to where they decide to take matters into their own hands. It comes to the point where they decide to get a little bit creative. If God's not going to move, then guess what? I'm going to move instead. I don't have time. I'm 85 years old. I can't wait any longer. Let's get it going. Well, that's flawed thinking. They're not waiting on God to be faithful. He said he's going to do this. He will follow through. Very flawed. You see, what happens is Sarai approaches Abram. And she says, hey, listen, I know we haven't started this family yet, but I've got an idea. How about you marry my servant, Hagar? You have a baby with Hagar, and then we can start building this family like that. Anybody ever watch Jerry Springer in the 90s? I feel like that this is the opening scene of Jerry Springer in the 90s. Jerry. Nobody? Okay. This can't go right. It can only go wrong at this point. So what happens is, this might be a surprise to you, but there begins to be a little bit of tension between Sarai and Hagar. Here Hagar is. She is pregnant with Abram's baby. She's Abram's the baby daddy. And this is, I mean, I don't know. I get a crack out of this, man. It's hilarious. But I get a crack out of it? I don't know. I get a laugh out of it. Anyways, so what happens is there's like animosity between these two. The scripture actually says that Hagar began to despise Sarai. Well, what happens after this is Sarai goes to Abram, and she goes, this is all your fault. What? This was your idea. Man. Can any husbands in the house, could you identify with the fact that maybe something was your wife's idea, but when it failed and backfired, it became your fault? You guys are smart. You're not raising your hands. I know that's never happened to me, but I'm sure there's somebody out there. Well, it comes to the point where Hagar is feeling the pressure, and she's like, I don't have to take this. I'm packing up and hitting the desert. So she packs what she has and what she can carry, and she heads out into the desert. So here she is, pregnant, wandering in the desert. She's thirsty. She's hungry. She's at the end of her rope. She doesn't know what to do. She's been thrust into the situation. Well, the angel of the Lord comes to her, and God finds pity on her. And the angel of the Lord gives her some advice. He says to her, Hagar, just go back. Go back and submit to Sarai. I know it's not ideal, but just go back and submit to her. And if you do this, I'm going to bless you. I'm going to give you more descendants than you can even count. Well, she does this, right? And the angel of the Lord also says, when you have your son, you're going to name him Ishmael. But there's a little bit of a catch. Ishmael he's going to be a little bit wild, right? The Bible even says Ishmael will be a wild donkey of a man. I don't know what that means, but it sounds pretty wild. It says his hands will be against everyone, and everyone's hand will be against him, and he will live in hostility towards all his brothers. Now, let's remind ourselves of what we're trying to learn here this morning. God is faithful even when we are flawed. This isn't the end of the story, right? This is a flawed moment where they feel like that God's not going to do it, so they try and make it happen. Very flawed, but God is still very faithful. You see, another 10 years passes, and the angel of the Lord appears to Abram. And this is going to be it. This is going to be the big one. In Genesis 17, verses 1 through 6, it says, when Abram was 99 years old, he's getting up there. When he was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you. I will greatly increase your numbers. Abraham fell down. He fell down before God. And he said to him, as for me, this is my covenant with you. You will be the father of many nations. No longer will you be called Abram. Your name will be Abraham. For I have made you the father of many nations. I will make you very fruitful. I will make nations out of you, and kings will come from you. So as we've discovered here in past sermons, that when somebody gets a name change, that means God is doing or about to do something very significant in their life. So God comes to him and he changes his name from Abram to Abraham, and he changes Sarai's name to Sarah. So God's about to do something big. Well, about a year after that experience with the Lord, they have a baby. Finally, 100 years old. He set out at 75 years old. And finally, at 100 years old, do the math, that's 25 years of waiting. 25 years of waiting for this thing to start happening. He felt the call 25 years. Can you wrap your mind around 25 years? Think of the stress and the fights maybe him and his wife had over things not happening. And one might be saying, just be faithful, we'll wait on the Lord. The other one's saying, no, we can't wait anymore. If this is going to happen, we got to make it happen. 25 years, y'all. It's a long time. But God is faithful, even when we're flawed. It's not on our timeline, it's on God's timeline. Well, at this point in time, they have that baby boy, and they name him Isaac. I'm sure you've heard of Isaac. Well, we're coming to what I like to call the test. We're coming to the point in the story where things are really going to get hard. You think 25 years was hard? You just wait. In Genesis 22, verses 1 through 2, it says this. It says, sometime later, God tested Abraham. He said to him, Abraham, here I am, he replied. Then God said, take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you. Whoa, 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 whoa. I don't think I heard that right, God. Like, could you really just tell me to do this? To sacrifice my only son? God's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Could you really be calling me to this? Well, maybe the original calling wasn't even right, because if this isn't right, then that can't be right. Could you imagine the doubt that maybe began to swirl inside of Abraham's head? How could this be so? As he laid his head on the pillow that night, I'm sure he had some deliberating to do. But he decided to keep stepping. He decided that, well, God, he did give me a son, and we can start this thing. I'm just going to step, and I'm going to see what he does. So early the next morning, Abraham got up, and he loaded his donkey for the trip. He got the wood for the altar, he got his knife, and he got his boy Isaac ready to go. Isaac's probably about 12 years old at this point in time. That's what Google says. So they head towards the direction that the Lord leads them. And they get to the bottom of this mountain, and they begin to get ready to ascend this mountain. And as they go up the mountain, Abraham has Isaac carry this wood. The wood that the altar will be built on. I think there's some imagery there that we could probably relate to, that Isaac is carrying the very thing that will be his demise, potentially. Isaac is carrying the thing that will be his end. This wood that the altar will be built with. I wonder if anybody in here can identify with you carrying something for too long. You're carrying something that the enemy means to end you with. But God means to turn it around and use it for his glory. We're going to put a pin in that, and we're going to come back to it. Walking up the mountain, Isaac looks to his dad, and he says, Dad, I noticed we have the wood for the altar. I noticed that you have your knife with you. We have all the things for this sacrifice to happen, but where's the lamb? What are we going to sacrifice when we get up there? Abraham's reply is this: God himself will provide the lamb for the burnt offering, my son. Well, they get up to the top of the mountain, they set up the altar, and I can only imagine that Abraham's kind of dragging his feet to do this, right? He's putting it off as long as possible, but he still is going to do it. Well, he builds this altar, and at this point in time, there's nothing else to do except for lay Isaac down on the altar. So what happens is Isaac climbs up on the altar, and I could only just imagine this in my head, to where he's laying down. Isaac is looking up at his father, fully trusting him. But here Abraham is fully trusting his God. So Isaac's trusting his father, and Abraham's trusting his father to come through. And I can only imagine it that he begins to unsheath his knife, and he begins to stretch his arm up. And he's stretching his arm, and I think that probably as he stretched the knife up, he began to have tears stream down his face. Could you imagine this going through his head? 25 years I've waited for this boy, 25 years, and now it's going to be gone in just a moment. Could you imagine the anguish? He's about to end his son's life. And at the very pinnacle of his reach, something amazing happens. The angel of the Lord speaks. It says in Genesis 22, verses 11 through 13, "But the angel of the Lord called out from heaven, 'Abraham, Abraham.' 'Here I am,' he replied. 'Do not lay a hand on that boy,' he said. 'Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God, because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son.' Abraham looked up, and there in the thicket he saw a ram caught by its horns. He went over and took the ram, and he sacrificed it as a burnt offering instead of his son. Abraham called that place, 'The Lord will provide.'" So here he is about to do it. And then all of a sudden, God stops him. He says, "Don't touch that boy. I've provided. Don't touch that boy. Provision is in the thicket." I feel like that should be a sermon title. Provision is in the thicket. What a testament to God's faithfulness. And what a testament to Abraham to go through this. Abraham might have messed up a bunch, but the important part is he never gave up. You see, we can be flawed, and we can fall, and we can mess up, but you can't quit. You have to keep stepping by faith. God is faithful even when we are flawed. Well, I'm going to fast forward to where Isaac has some kids of his own. Isaac has some kids of his own, and he grows up, and he marries a woman by the name of Rebekah. And Rebekah and Isaac have two sons, and they're twins, Jacob and Esau. Right? So Esau was considered to be the firstborn son because he came out first. Jacob was quite literally on his heels. You see these boys, they grow up, and Esau was more of a good old boy. You know what I mean? Like, he liked to hunt and fish. He liked to, be outside, an outdoorsman. He probably had a skull ring in his back pocket. I'm not advocating for that, by the way. But you get what I mean. So Isaac favored Esau. Jacob, on the other hand, he was on the other side of the spectrum. He was more of a quiet dude, kind of a mama's boy. He hung around the house with mom and helped her, do things around the house. So naturally, Rebekah favored Jacob. Well, what happens is these guys really vied for the inheritance that was going to be left to them. So what happens is Jacob devises this plan to steal Esau's birthright. You see, Esau was going to be owed double the portion of inheritance because he was the firstborn son. And he was also owed the blessing from his father. Well, one day, Esau comes in from the fields. He's been working, he's been hunting and fishing, and he comes in and he's absolutely famished, right? He's famished to the point where he's like, I'll do anything for some grub right now. And Jacob is in the kitchen, he's cooking some stew. He comes in, he's like, hey, give me that stew. I'm starving. Come on. And Jacob's like, yeah, sure, man. I'll set you up with this stew right now, as long as you give me your firstborn birthright. Oh, well, I guess he was really hungry, so he decided to go ahead and do it. So I'm going to have to speed things up a little bit here. So what happens is he makes this trade, right? And later on, a little bit down the line, Esau is in with his father Isaac. And at this point, Isaac, you know, the boy who was about to be sacrificed, Isaac is old and he's feeble and he's laying in bed and he's almost blind. And Esau and Jacob, or Esau and Isaac are conversating. And Isaac's like, this is going to be the day where I give you my blessing, which is a day that Esau would have really, really looked forward to. Big deal. He said, go get me a plate of grilled meat, some chicken McNuggets with no skins. And after you come back, I'll eat a meal, and then I'll give you the blessing, right? I will bless you. Well, Rebecca, she likes some metal, Rebecca. Come on, Rebecca. She is at the door hearing this conversation go down, right? She's at the door, and she hears, and then she rushes off. She goes, all right, this is our time. This is our time to take the birthright for real, to take the blessing. And she does is she says, hey, go put on your brother Esau's clothes, Jacob, and then we'll put some goat skin on your arms and your neck so you're hairy like your brother. It's kind of weird, but it's what happens. He must be hairy like me. And then take this meat in here. I've already got it ready for you, and you'll deceive your father. And then you'll get the birthright for reals, right? Well, what happens is that it works. He goes in, Isaac smells the clothes that are Esau's, and he's like, it must be Esau. He's also hairy like a goat. Must be Esau, and he gives him the blessing. And he also reaffirms the firstborn inheritance, a double portion. Well, by this time, Esau is back with his chicken McNuggets, and he's a day late and $1 short because he finds out what had happened. Well, this enrages Esau. He's like, if I find Jacob, I'm going to kill him, which he probably would have. But what happens is Rebecca, she comes and she finds Jacob, and she says, you need to pack your stuff. You need to go live with your auntie in Bel Air. Fresh Prince reference. You need to go live with these distant relatives because you're in trouble. Okay? Yeah, we're jumping ahead here. So what happens is Jacob goes off, and it is like 20 years down the road. Jacob goes off, and he has his a family of his own. He gets married, he has kids, and it comes to the point where he's ready to claim this inheritance from his father. But what he'll have to do is he'll have to face Esau to do it. Problem, Esau wants to beat you up. So what he does is he sends messengers ahead, and he wants to kind of put his feelers out, right? Well, he does that, and the messengers come back, and they're like, hey, your brother, he doesn't want to wait for you to come. He's going to send 400 of his men with him. And I'd imagine they're pretty hairy too. I don't know. At this point, Jacob is super scared, right? He's like, I don't know what to do. He's coming for me. Well, he devises this plan. His camp, he divides it into 2 different camps. And he says, first camp, you guys go ahead. And when you get to my brother, we're going to give him all this stuff. We're going to have herds and flocks and servants. And then the second camp, you do the same thing. When you meet my brother, give him this stuff. He wants to schmooze him over, right? Well, Jacob stays behind one extra night by himself, and something absolutely crazy happens. Something bananas, right? He's by himself, and this man approaches him. Well, it turns out that it's God. I know. It's God. And it turns into Stone Cold Steve Austin, and they get into this wrestling match, right? They wrestle, and it comes to the point where Jacob says, I'm not going to let you go until you bless me. Jacob must be tougher than we thought. I'm not going to let go until you bless me. So the Lord blesses him. And he says, you're no longer Jacob. You're going to be called Israel. Sound familiar? The nation of Israel. Well, the next morning, Israel's limping because the Lord did a number on him. And he goes and he meets his brother Esau. Well, he's a changed man. He goes ahead of the camps. He's like, I'm going to meet him face to face. And what happens is he gets to him and he's like, humble. He bows to him 7 times. It sounds like a different guy. He's humbled after his experience with God. He bows to him 7 times, and Esau, we're all ready for it, man. He's going to get him. He comes at him, and he embraces him with a hug. What? He embraces him with a hug. And tears began to stream down both of their faces. Forgiveness. This thing that happened 20 years ago, where all the flawedness had been there in between and all the deception on Jacob's behalf and Esau wanting to kill his brother, and God has mended this relationship. Because now, the same calling that was on Abraham is going down through his descendants. So now Isaac and then Israel, right? So now Israel can go forth and become a great nation. I just want to stop for just a second and ask you, are you flawed? The truth is we've all messed up, and we're all flawed. Every single one of us. And if we're not careful, those flaws can make us think that God can't use us. And maybe you've heard from God, like Abraham did. Whatever it was, or like I heard from God. Like I could have very easily thought, I messed up way too much. I can't be used now, and gave up. Went the other direction even more. Right? But what happens is we have to have faith enough to keep stepping and shake off the fact that we're flawed. Take another step and shake it off. We have to keep moving forward. So no matter what God has called you to do, He will become faithful on His end. We just have to keep stepping. No matter what it is. Well, if that's you this morning, I want you to be encouraged by this. The fact that you might have messed up. Actually, you have messed up. I know. There's nobody who's perfect. But God, whatever He has called you to do, will remain faithful even when we are flawed. Now, right now, I feel like that there's something that we do every week, but I want to offer an invitation to salvation. You see, maybe your first step in your faith walk, you haven't met Jesus, this guy, that we're talking about. Well, we want to give you the opportunity to do that this morning. So, could everybody go ahead and bow your heads and close your eyes? God, we are just thankful for how faithful you are, no matter how flawed that we are. God, we know that we have to keep moving. We have to keep our faith. We have to keep stepping and shake off the flaws and just keep moving forward. And we have to put on the righteousness of Jesus. God, we ask you to be with us and help us to have the faith of Abraham. Well, guys, everybody, please keep your head bowed and your eyes closed. If you want to meet Jesus for the first time, if you want to accept Christ as your Savior, I encourage you right now to repeat this prayer after me. God, thank you for sending your Son, Jesus. Thank you for sending Jesus to die on the cross. I believe that He died and He rose again. And I believe that He's coming back one day for His church. Come into my heart. Be the Savior of my life. Help me to step by faith, even when I'm flawed. Amen. Everybody still bowing your heads. If you made that decision for the first time, could you do me a solid and just lift your hand up to let us know that decisions were made this morning? All right. Thank you.